have some questions for you. Do you mind?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I'll throw them out in the middle, like when we're chatting. But I'm so curious because you've interviewed so many people. Like, some insight from you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like I said, it's a very casual two-way conversation. So that's what's the way I like to do it. So, but
Cool.
for our listeners, welcome back, Inebri-ites. I have been working on this one for a while, because it kind of got delayed because California basically burnt down. But we have Sandro uh Gebert. No, I want to make it French. I want to make it like really French.
Sandro Gebert.
Gebert.
Yeah.
Like I want to be like Gebert. Like I watched too much
Uh,
hockey, I think.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. But thanks for coming on, man. I know it's been kind of a rough beginning of 2025 for you.
It has. It's been worse for more people, but yeah, it's been a disruptive start to the year for a lot of people here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. It's I swear to God, it seems like every year someone I know is gonna be like, "This is the year," and everyone's like, "Shut up, to stop jinxing it." Yeah, it's been pretty quiet where I am from. Like, we're not even really getting snow this year. I mean, a little bit, but it's been. And now that I say that, like all hell's gonna break loose. So,
Well, yeah, well, it's been feeling like that here, but luckily things seem to have calmed down a little bit.
and all your family and friends all good, or I
I
mean,
I know some people who lost homes, and it was. I've been in Los Angeles for a very long time, about 27 years,
yeah,
and I can't remember another time where so many people from so many diverse areas were affected by one or more of these things, and um, it's really unfortunate, but it is, I guess, the reality of living in Southern California, and also just kind of the newer reality where this is happening more often.
yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate. It seems like every year someplace on Earth is kind of going through that. Um, so you said you've been there 27 years. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Arizona,
Okay.
and I moved out here for college, and um, wanted to explore art even further from just my childhood experience and growing up. I grew up in a very artistic family, a lot of creatives, art collectors, was exposed to museums, and just developed a love for art very young. And to continue that, I wanted to study filmmaking. I thought that that would be a really interesting way to kind of expand my artistic horizons. And just, it was a medium that I really loved at the time,
Yeah.
and just wanted to see what I could make and go out there and, use my voice and bring things to life.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny. Like I didn't grow up in a creative household, but it was very much like very encouraged. Uh, like my father drew a little bit, so that's kind of like what got me started. And then um, there was a Saturday morning. It wasn't even a cartoon. It was like before the cartoons came on. It was very local because I guess the guy, like I found out years later, the guy who was on the show lived like maybe 4 or 5 towns away, and it was called Captain Bob. And like
okay.
so, every Saturday morning, I would sit down and draw with Captain Bob, and it would be like, "Hey, today we're gonna learn how to draw a cat." And he would like break it down step by step, and like it was always just something that my parents were like would buy me supplies. And when I got older, they encouraged me to join band and theater, so it was very blue collar, but they were very encouraging of like the arts. So it was kind of cool.
That's awesome. I do the same for my children. I make sure that they can explore and express themselves with all sorts of different artistic projects, and it just kind of keeps their imagination running. And it's something that I think needs to be nurtured further into life than maybe everyone has the opportunity to do. Creativity is something that I think society really encourages in the beginning, and then says, okay, now you got to put that down, and here's real life, and go to the cubicle, and and kind of give up on that. And I think there's so much more to life than just giving up on those creative endeavors, and you can. use all those tools so much more in life than just making art. But it's collaboration, it's creative thinking, it's definitely something that I'm glad they nurtured, and I also plan to nurture.
Yeah. Uh, do your are your how old are your kids? I should say.
I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, so they're
Oh,
really
so
young.
they're real little. Yeah, yeah,
Really young, yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
had children later in life, and I have to say, it's interesting. In my artistic journey, my children have really influenced it because it was a revelation to see just how people, when they have no preconceived notions of what art should be, what they make, how they make it, and how they just move on to the next project. They don't think about it very much. It's a very unconscious kind of release of this like purely human urge to create, to bring to life an idea you have.
Yeah,
So
and
I
it's
try to.
such sorry, it's such
No, no,
a it gets crushed out of us so young. And then it's because we do like a lot of events where we're out like, trying to encourage people to, paint and draw and whatever. And one of our longest running events is we do a figure drawing group. We bring in a model to a this bar that has kind of like a stage area, and artists draw from the model. And so many people are like, "Oh, I can't do that." I'm like, "No, you can. You absolutely can." And it's just like it stop thinking that it's going to look like the Mona Lisa when you're done, and you can do it.
right,
And
right.
it's trying to unwrite that only certain people can draw kind of things. Like everyone can do it, just at different
Uh,
levels.
I feel that completely, and the difference between people who pursue art for a career and those who don't, I think, is there's some innate talent, right? But I think mostly it's just nurturing it and putting in the time. I think a misconception people have about artists is that they go to their studio, they sit around, they wait for inspiration, and then they make something. When really it's just kind of a 9 to 5. You go in there and you grind. You
Yep.
just keep trying and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, and just produce. And after 10 years of that, you end up with something that maybe are up to your own standards, and you feel good to show people.
Yeah, and and that's one of those things is everyone is like, oh, well, I can't draw, and I'm like, it's that event is really the one time that I really get to draw. And I'm like, it's not about like I never come out of there and frame any of it. I just have sketchbooks upon sketchbooks upon sketchbooks of these, short drawings, and that we've been doing it like 13 years, so there's some definite improvement, and it's more relaxing and for my mental health than anything else.
It is one of the best, at least for me personally, one of the best ways to overcome a bad day or get past feeling depressed, is to create something, because no matter how it turns out, just the act itself will make you feel better.
Yeah.
you know um, it's just expressing oneself. And I have some friends who aren't very creative or don't feel they're very creative. They don't exercise it very much. And what I love to do is gift them a sketchbook of like 300-page mini sketchbook. And I say, hey, once a day, just spend 5 minutes, draw something, write something, an idea, a song, whatever it is. Just even if you just spend a couple minutes expressing yourself, writing it down, date it. If you can get through a month of that or 2 months of that, you're just going to feel better, because there's something deeply seated inside of us that needs to express something. If you look back 10,000 years to the cave paintings, this is just something we've always done.
Hmm.
And now it's become a totally different animal, right? It's professional artists, but there's also just graphic designers and there's animators. I mean, this just kind of exploded into all these different realms, but it's around us every day. And I just wish more people would pick it up and try.
And kind of what got this whole process started was, um I wanted to do a podcast about art, and my now editor is like, art's visual, that's stupid. And I'm like, all right, fair point. And then I realized that it's more that creative mindset. It doesn't matter what your medium of creativity is. We're kind of all made the same way, where it's like I literally just interviewed a stand-up comic, and he's like, "Oh, I kind of did a open mic, and then it just became an obsession." And he's like, "I want to do it every day." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get that, like 100%, you know." And it's that like I don't know what it is, but like it's just that I need to do this, and I need to do it all the time, and it makes me happy, sort of, or
Right.
less
I mean,
miserable.
it's so you've interviewed a ton of creatives, musicians,
Mhm.
writers, artists. Do you find any like common traits or mindsets that the successful ones have? Do you feel like there's a through line there?
So the successful ones understand that it is like you were saying, it's a job, it's a grind. There are some people with amazing skill that don't really go anywhere, but it's because they're like, well, I don't want to like, oh, that feels like a job, or I don't want to do that corporate thing because it's selling out. And I'm like, well,
Right.
I get that, but in the same aspect, would you rather sell out doing something kind of on your own terms, or work at IKEA? And it's like
Yeah.
it's to me, it's a matter of I rather do something that I enjoy, even if that particular project I don't enjoy, on my terms, than do something for someone else. So I feel like that kind of well, the perfect example is when COVID hit. I'm not the kind of person who can work from home. So that's when we established our office, because I'm like, I need to get up and shower and go somewhere to get work done.
Right.
And so now we're on our third one. But I was just telling someone the other day, I'm like, it feels more the way I've wanted than any of the other ones, because it's a little officey, a little studio, a little industrial. So like I feel like I can do artwork here too. And if I spill something on the floor, it's not going to be the end of the world. And um, yeah, so I think it's somewhere between treating it like a job and not being able to not do it. That kind of I
Yeah.
would do this regardless, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's the dream, right? I think it's so hard to, when you try to monetize your art, it gets difficult to figure out when you're overthinking the monetization, when you're overthinking the sales side of things, because in its purest form, you create art because you love doing it and you want to share it with people.
Hmm.
And when you bring money into it, and then you bring in, gallery representation, and then you bring in social media, it muddies the water because all of a sudden you're wearing a lot of hats and you have to do a lot of different things, and it takes away from a bit of the joy,
Yep.
because all of a sudden you are maybe working three or four jobs actually because you have to juggle all these different things. And I'm always trying to remind myself to come back to the starting point, make the art that I just screams to be created, and to share it with people, and hopefully make a living on it, because
Yep.
it's not a cheap hobby,
No,
you
no, it's
know,
not.
you
Yeah,
know.
and it's in the making the living on it is one of those you have kids, I have older kids, and I've always been like, do what you want. But I know so many people that are like, oh, my kid wants to, you know, uh, be a musician, but I told them to have a backup plan. They want to do this, but I told them I'm like, backup plans suck. They ruin everything. Like, there's something to me about that sink or swim. Like, I'm gonna make this work because I don't have another option. And I
Right.
think it's too hard to live a creative life if you have kind of that exit, that safe way to be like, I can work less hard and make, more money.
Yeah.
And it's just too easy to kind of take that off ramp.
It's also kind of tricky though to have uh, bills hanging over your head, thinking I need to sell this. I think it could also interfere with what you make and what the creative process looks like, because then maybe you're thinking, what do people want to see? What do people want to buy instead
Yep.
of what do I want to create? So it's a double-edged sword. It took me a very long time to make this my full-time job. After college, I jumped around a lot of different industries of, proper filmmaking, but then also motion graphics and graphic design, and ended up doing promotional cards for a gallery, and then ended up working in that gallery, and then ended up running a gallery. So it was, I always wanted to choose an artistic path, but it was always like, you got to do the sensible job. You got to do the thing that pays weekly. And, I wouldn't be where I am without that artistic journey, because during those years, I got to meet a ton of amazing artists. And especially when I worked for the galleries, talking to an artist, getting them comfortable and just asking them questions was like maybe the best schooling I've ever gone through, because it cuts through what your art teacher tells you or what fellow artists tell you. That you get to talk to really successful artists, and they share with you the realities of things. Like, it's not so great sometimes. Sometimes you need another job. It used to be better. Or there's just, everyone had a different perspective, but it's kind of a cheat code to pick all these people's brains over the years. And I use all of that information every day when I work, because it's all relevant.
Yeah, I don't remember where I first got that bit of advice or even like who said it, but it was essentially was find the person who's doing what you want to do and then be their friend. And it's not like you're trying to steal, but like you can learn so much. And at the time, I ran a comic book shop, and so I kind of like zeroed in on this guy, been like, all right, he has the kind of business that I want, and then I got to know him, and then you kind of learn some stuff from him, and then you kind of like, all right, he's not exactly where I thought he was. That guy is. So then you befriend that guy, and
Yeah,
you learn some stuff from him, and I've always done it that way, and it's just you end up with some amazing friends, but you learn so much because people just have tons of knowledge, and most people, if you just ask, they'll tell you.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I remember I was working a gallery show once. We were featuring a really well-known artist, and you can almost tell when an artist comes into a show because they start asking technique questions. Like, a
Yep.
collector never comes in and goes, "Tell me more about the process," and you're like, "Hmm." And I remember he told this artist everything, spilled all his secrets, told him all the different, techniques and supplies and how he did it. And afterwards, when the artist asking the questions left, I said, "I can't believe you did that. You told her all your secrets." And he goes, "Oh, she'll never be able to do it." You know.
Yeah, yeah.
And some people, share openly because they have the confidence that, look, secrets are not what make me great. The artist, the process, the years of experience make them great, right? So it's not some big secret they have to hold. And I've always kind of carried that, where I thought, you just got to be open with people, tell people, if they have questions about how you did what and your techniques. It's like, you either share it because you're confident, that yours is unique, or you hide it because it's kind of, I think it's a form of insecurity, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just made me think of a good artist friend of mine, Alex Lever. I absolutely love her work, and her stuff always kind of reminded me of this weird mix of like R. Crumb and MC Escher.
Okay.
And one day I'm like, I can't even wrap my brain around how you even start to do this. And she goes, "Oh, I do this and I do this and then I do this." And I'm like, "Oh," and I just felt like someone showed me the inside of the magic trick where I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's not less impressive, but kind of less impressive." Cause I'm like, "Oh, now I see how you do it." And it was, I mean, so, generous of her to kind of share that, but it was just kind of like, oh, bummer. I wish I didn't know now. Yeah. So,
Along those lines, though, to me, one of the biggest changes I think artists have to go through in today's day and age is social media. And you see a lot of artists oversharing their process, maybe. I think there is being open with other creatives, your process, but also there's a bit of like, don't reveal everything behind the curtain. Like there has to be some magic to your process. It has to be a little bit of a mystery, I think, to make it interesting to the audience, right? So it's kind of, I guess I'm playing both sides there, but I it's like you said, like, oh, it's just this, and this. You want some mystery for your audience so that they just feel the magic.
Yeah. Um, was there like someone that shared a bit of their process with you that you're like, oh, I'm going to now incorporate it? Like, I feel like most of the time when I incorporate anything into my work, it is kind of subconscious or just like, um, I did some like the last drawing thing we did. Um, I did white pencil on black paper, so it's kind of doing like that, drawing the highlights and not the shadow type thing, which is
Yeah,
totally not my style. And it just happened that the only sketchbook I happen to have was this black paper that I'm like, I don't even know why I have this. Like, so to me, it's more accidental. But like, have you ever made that? That's a cool thing that guy's doing. I'm going to steal it because art is theft, really. We all steal our best ideas, I think.
I do it all the time. I
Yeah.
think it's called inspiration. just kidding. No,
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to go to an art fair and just see what's up and coming. What do galleries think's important? What are people gravitating towards? And just take pictures of artists that I feel like I'm aligned with, and like think, oh, that's a great way to present that, or I would frame that way too, or oh, I never thought of that. I love to steal people's ideas, and then make it your own, of course,
Yeah.
which is the trick. But I mean, social media, I think a lot of people who follow artists are artists who want to see how they do it because they want to know a little bit more about techniques and also supplies. A lot of my current supplies, I think I picked up from other artists' social media over the years. Like, oh, they don't use this product, they use this product. And I try it to much better. And it's like a very cool way to also share your knowledge, is when you're open about your supplies.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things about our figure drawing group is, someone will show up with, my buddy John showed up with a brush pen one time. And then, like, the next time, half of us had brush pens because we're like, that was so cool. And now it's like, now everyone seems to be going in the iPad direction, which I don't know. I still can't get behind that. I don't really have a good reason other than it, I just, I, this to me, there's something tactile about holding the sketchbook and the pencil. Yeah, I don't know. I'm old.
It's why I have 180,000 sketchbooks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I hear you. I've tried it. I think it has a place, but I love paper and pen. I love pencil and sketchbooks, and it's why I make paintings. So the physical act, the touch, the texture, it's kind of it's a neat little ritual, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when it's all digital, it can be very pretty and you can share it, but there's something about taking something intangible and then bringing it into the real world.
Yeah, and to me, it's even something about like I over the past I don't know 6 8 years, I do mostly like a pen and ink type thing, and there's something about by the time you get to the sixth or seventh drawing, now you have ink on the side of your hand, and it's adding texture to your drawing just because that ink is like carrying over, and it's like that won't happen. As far there's probably a friggin' app for it, but as far as I know, it doesn't happen on iPads.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm OCD with my painting, so I never guess I try not to get anything anywhere that's not supposed to go. Even
Yeah.
though some of my stuff looks a little more loose, it's pretty well defined and laid out before I even put paint to panel. So
Do
um,
you? It's interesting because like I feel like I'm trying to get more and more away from that because I'm very critical of my own work, which I think everybody is, but I'm like a bit of a control freak. Like I know people that do watercolors. I'm like, I just can't do watercolor because I feel like I don't have any control whatsoever.
right,
And but now I'm kind of like going in a direction where I'm like trying to push myself where I'm doing like ink washes or single line drawings where I'm like, I can't, of course that arm's not going to be right. I drew it with one line, so it almost like I think I'm trying to build in excuses for myself to allow for imperfection because I think the results are better when I just allow for that, opposed to trying to make it all perfect.
Right. Definitely something to strive for. It's hard for me to do. I had an artist friend who said, "Don't you just love just grabbing a random color and putting it on there?" And I'm like, "No, I have a Pantone book. I'm like trying to mix this thing to perfection." And he goes, "No, you should try sometime." I'm like, "I can't." To me, like the color is so important, and just my process involves really laying everything out before I even start painting. And maybe I should try that, but it's a foreign concept to me.
Yeah. Um, there was an artist, a local guy. I wish I could remember. His stuff was phenomenal. He did, um, I believe he was, I don't believe he moved from Mexico, but I believe his family moved from Mexico. But he would do these kind of like um Mexican inspired drawings. So they were like luchadors and these cool drawings, but did them in kind of that uh style that you would see samurai drawings done in.
Oh, very cool.
And so we were at a show one time and there's like all these weird like splatters and like little pen marks and squiggles in the background that I never noticed when I saw them in print. And I asked, he goes, "Oh," he's like, to kind of get out of that like blank page syndrome, he would give the blank pages and he would either like splatter them with coffee or give them to his kids. And the kids would like scribble on them and then he would like work on top of that. And I'm like, that's
I
such a
love that.
cool, yeah. So, uh, do you hope to? I'm only asking this because I've done it recently. Uh, do like collaborative work with your kids? Like, have you ever thought about that?
So it's funny enough, my daughter and I did a collaborative piece years ago. It's one of my favorite pieces. It
Yeah,
was I recreated. She had this coloring book, and she just scribbled hearts and different stuff on it. And I thought, "You're a genius. It's a beautiful layout."
yeah,
So I transposed that to a bigger canvas, and then had her come back on top with more details, and then um, I've done that. It's been a little harder with the commercial work I'm doing now. It's I'm still exploring my own style and my own way of painting, and I should circle back to that. That's a good idea.
yeah, yeah. I'll tell you, as it gets old, as they get older, um, they get more opinionated.
Oh, mine are already pretty much opinionated, but
Yeah,
I hear that.
my youngest
Uh,
is turning 21, and like 2 3 years ago a friend of mine bought a house and they had a pool with a diving board and they decided they didn't want the diving board and asked if I could turn it into like an art piece that they could hang out by the pool. And I'm like, definitely, but I want to work on it with Zoe. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. The whole time, well, you're doing that wrong. I'm like, let me paint my side. You worry about what you're doing, and it was to this day, like we'll talk about it because it was so much fun. And yeah.
that's good stuff, though. You sound like a good dad. It's definitely anytime there's something artistic to do, and they get involved, not in my professional work, but just in general, it's just so much fun to watch them work. And like I said, take inspiration from the freeness of it, and
Yeah.
the non self judgment.
Yeah.
They never put down a painting and go, "It's not very good," or "I hate it," or it's not good enough. They don't even think about it. They move on.
Yeah. If they think about it, they're like, can we put it on the fridge? Like that's,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
the
oh
house
no,
art gallery.
they go up here. They definitely go up on the wall.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's such a shame that, and I don't, like you're talking about gifting your friend sketchbooks. I'm like, that's such a cool idea. But I feel like you'd almost have to be like, you're not allowed to show, not allowed, because if someone wants to show, they should, but like, you should encourage them to not feel obligated to show it. Because I feel like
sure.
that's like when we start to kind of shut down is like you're looking at your drawing and looking at someone else's drawing and be like, mine's crap. And because
Right.
you're comparing it to someone else and you don't know what their situation is or, how they got there. Um,
I
yeah.
mean,
So,
also, like,
That's a
I was
good.
just going to say most adults aren't sketching every day. That's
Yeah.
not something most adults are into, or have time for. And my wife is a musician, but she hasn't performed in many years. And I really encourage her to get her sketchbook out and start writing some lyrics down and try to get back into it. And even she's super talented, and there's still trepidation, I think, because I think once you've walked away from it long enough, it's hard to believe you could get back into it or find that part of you again. But
Hmm.
it's in there, and unfortunately, it takes a long time to unlock. But if you are persistent and keep working at it, it. I think that the most gifted artists in the world don't go anywhere without an incredible amount of work on top of the talent. I also believe that middle of the road artists can develop into great artists if they just grind it out. I
Yeah.
think it's two-thirds effort. And, an example of that is that my sister is also a very gifted artist and naturally talented. And I always kind of compared myself to her. And at a young age, she always taught me her, more advanced, techniques and stuff. And then, at some point, she gave up on art for various reasons. And I just felt even more driven to continue and push and figure out where my limitations are and break through my boundaries and just to see how far I could take it.
Yeah. And that kind of circles back to like that. What is the creative successful, or the successful creative person, like the common stream? And I don't know your sister's situation. I'm not saying like she gave up. It could be anything, but it's those people that stick with it. And when people look at my drawing, they're like, "Oh, I could never draw like this." I'm like, "Well, if you drew for 40 years, you'd probably get at least close to this."
Yeah,
You
I think
know?
she didn't give up. It was more of just life happened.
Yeah.
She got married and had kids, and life happens, right? I mean, I wasn't painting for the first 3 or 4 years of my children's life, and it happened to coincide with a pandemic, and we had a fire 6 years ago where my studio burned down, and that kind of got in the way of working too. And like life comes at you, and
Yeah.
all we see on social media is just pretty paintings, and we don't see what people are really struggling with because me, you, anybody, there's going to be a lot of hardship in life, and it's makes it harder to even push through. But here we are.
So I have a photography friend, or photographer friend, I should say. And he's very much like wanting to get into galleries. Do you have advice for like any aspiring artist to like how do you get into galleries? Like I've shown some stuff in galleries a couple times, but it's mostly because like I knew the guy running the gallery.
Yeah,
Um, but like, is there like a trick? Like, what's the best way? Because you worked in a gallery, so I feel like
yeah.
you
I've
got the
I've
most
lived on both
influence.
sides of the
Yeah,
desk, and I would say it's extremely difficult. There's a lot of competition. Um, I think one of the best ways is to befriend artists who are in galleries, and if they believe your work is compatible with that space, they'll give you a recommendation. It's
yeah,
I hate to say it's who you know, but it's a lot of who you know. Um, Not a lot of galleries are looking for open submissions because they've got a full deck of artists already to represent, and it's a full-time grind to run a gallery and to try to sell work and keep the lights on and all that. So there's no one formula, I would say, and I don't think it's ever easy, but um, becoming connected with that world helps. And
yeah,
a lot of times, I think artists recommending you to their gallery, it will get you a lot farther than trying to get it on your own.
yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned selling is a lot of work. It's like the most work. It's to me because we have responsible. I think we're down to three walls right now that we rotate art through, and they're just at businesses. We sell art from them, but like I always try to set the artist's expectation to be like,
Right.
this one's in a restaurant. It's not like people come in here to buy art. They come in here to buy dinner. They might buy art, but to find we've done pop ups and stuff like that, but to find a number of art collectors that are going to drop real money is very challenging.
Very challenging. I remember back when we had a gallery, we had a corporate office call us and say, "Hey, we'd love for your art to be on our walls. We have a lot of important people come in and out every day. Make a lot of just important, people with money to buy art." And I remember asking, "You've done this before?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, all the time." And I go, "Have you ever sold anything?" He goes, "No." And
Yeah.
that's when you realize like you need your art in front of people in a space where people are looking to buy art.
Yeah.
When it's in a restaurant or hotel or Airbnb, whatever, they're a great opportunity to get exposure, but you're going to get very few sales
Mhm.
because people are not going in there with the mindset, I want to buy art today. If they walk into a gallery space, they're
They're buying
thinking,
art.
I
Yeah.
might buy art today. And they're probably more than likely art buyers, right? I mean, one of the more interesting things about technology is that you get to look at your social media, you get to look at your analytics, you get to analyze who's seeing your work, how many people click like, how many people comment, and the number is astronomically small. Even with just a click of a button, that's all you have to do to show your appreciation. People don't do it because their life is busy, they're moving on. So to get someone to pay you lots of money for art is that's the ultimate trick. I mean, it's few and far between. That said, you find the right person, you find your person for that piece of art, and they're out there. There's no better feeling than watching that painting go home with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, it's so true. And just trying, it's like, one of those, oh, if it was easy, everybody would do it kind of things. And,
Yeah,
do you ever have those moments where you're like, why do I do this? Like I could go back to a job that I get a paycheck once a week kind of thing. Does that?
it's kind of been the opposite experience for me because it took me so long to become a full-time artist, and I worked around artists for so long. I knew better, I guess. So like
Yeah.
I was under no illusions of what this choice meant and what kind of obstacles were ahead of me. So, um, am I surprised I ended up doing it? A little bit, because it is a lot of work, and but in the end, I think we're all here for a purpose, and I think if you can find a purpose that is fulfilling and you can make some money at it, at least it feels like you've unlocked a secret, or you've, like, I don't know, a cheat code to life in a way.
Yeah.
And because making art is makes me very happy, and if I can share that with people, that feels really good.
Yeah. I mean, perfectly said. It does. I work more now, like more hours now than I've ever worked, but more than half of it doesn't feel like work at all. Like I've even had to turn my business partner, like we were running a comedy show on a sunset cruise on a paddle boat in Plymouth Harbor one night, and I had to nudge him and be like, "We're at work. We're working right now." And it was gorgeous, and like it was funny, and there was drinks, and people were laughing, and I'm like, "This people like I get paid to do this. This is amazing," and it's so much fun. And then trying to explain to people like what I do is just like a whole nother. Do you get that where you're like, oh, I'm an artist, and people be like, oh, do you kind of get that like patronizing tone?
Well, I used to tell people I'm a painter, and they go, "Oh, house or artist?" I'm like, "Artist." So now I lead with artist,
Yeah.
and then painter. There's a lot of creatives out here in California, so I don't know, a mixed bag.
Oh, that's true. Maybe it's a location thing. Like
I think it's a
I mean,
location
yeah,
thing. In fact, like some people are like really impressed, some people don't care.
yeah.
It's a mixed bag, but and you also have people that think like I remember talking to one gentleman, and he was blown away that I only produce 50 or 60 paintings a year on a good year.
I feel like that's a lot.
It's a lot. It
That's
is
a
a
super
lot.
lot. That's one a
That is
week.
super a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, and so there's always going to be people that don't really understand what you do, even if it seems kind of like easy to explain, you know. And you know, it's I think it's definitely tricky when someone has a job that is purely corporate or purely like a numbers game where it doesn't make as much sense. But when you mix in the passion and just the intrinsic reward of creating, you know, those who know, and there's nothing like it. It's
Yeah.
definitely um I can't imagine living life any other way because at the end of the day, when we're 90 years old, hopefully, and thinking back on our life, we're not going to say, glad I worked in that cubicle.
Yeah.
We're going to
Yeah.
say, damn, I'm glad I made all these paintings, you know,
Yeah.
or, you know, or spent time with friends and family, or just, you know, the joys of life, whatever it might be.
And I think that's one of those things that makes me very happy is because I get to meet so many people and have so many cool conversations. But like if I'm just kind of, at a party at a friend's house, whatever, and I meet someone new and you're there and someone's like, oh, I'm an electrician, and people are like, oh, that's cool. And the trades, and we should support trades, and we absolutely should. And they're like, what do you do? And then you start to explain. The next thing you're like, so then I was touring the Lizzie Borden house. And it's like, I have the stories,
Right.
So it's just like, yeah, there's never a dull moment. And I think that's what I really love is it's just this. I feel like the way I'm sure your kids probably feel when they're drawing. Like this is just fun. Like, and at the end I put it down and I just go on to something else, and I get to kind of live in that kind of mentality of like, let's just make something new. Let's go and just it's
That's so I have a lot of quotes around my studio, and one of them is let's make something new. You know, it's
yeah.
like I love to look at quotes and just be inspired and just start the day with that right kind of energy. And you know, we need everybody to do every job out there, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, do what you're good at. But this is what I'm good at, so I'm going
Yeah.
to keep doing it.
And
You know, one of the beautiful things about social media is meeting people like you, right? Like, I think 15 years ago, people wouldn't connect like this. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation. You wouldn't have found me through the algorithm, and we wouldn't have been able to just kind of rap today. And I think that's, you know, you always have to balance the beauty of social media with the downside, which is, you know, engagement and, you know, how fast people consume your work and all that, and the pressure to produce work all the time when you just can't as a creative. There's just not enough to satiate the audience. But
and how it emphasizes rage. That's to me like one of the things that I can't stand about it the most is it wants you to be angry.
it gets engagement, you know.
Yep.
So unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
But I try to keep my my social followers, you know, the who I follow tight to artists, and just to try to keep that lens on the world instead of just all the anger and the terribleness. You know, I mean, that's out there, but you know, kind of like my art, I want my art to reflect curiosity, mystery, but also like a bit of beauty, you know, like because the world is a terrible place. It's a painful life is terrible at times, and it's painful, but it's also beautiful and wonderful, and it's about perspective.
Yeah. And it's you need some of that hardship and struggle because otherwise you take the beauty for granted.
Right.
And I'm I think that's why I'm so happy doing what I do now is because I've been through those jobs that I dreaded and gave me chest pains just showing up at work, and now I can be like, yeah, I don't have to do that. And people are like, oh, you're gonna take President's Day off? I'm like, no, because I like what I do. So if
Yeah.
I take it off, I'm gonna end up working anyways. So
Yeah.
might as well at least go into the office. So but,
Awesome. Um, I have a question for you.
sure.
When you think about art that's timeless, what comes to mind? You know, because I feel like every artist struggles with making work that can stand the test of time, that will be relevant in 100 years.
Hmm. Yeah, that's tough because I mean, sometimes you think of stuff that is timeless And it's like, I think I mentioned the Mona Lisa before, but it's like, is it that someone else decided that that is the pinnacle painting, and so it's on every art history book, and it's the one that they talk about the most. um One of the most interesting art exhibits I've ever been to, and I was kind of blown away by it, was excuse my pronunciation, Hokusai, the Great Wave, the um wood block printer. And so you go in, and one, you never realize how big that painting or print is. It's enormous. But then like the rest of it was that this whole kind of conversation that we're having is like, here are all like his amazing works of like art that he created for him, or to represent his home Japan and his love of his country. But then there were whole sections of like, well, these are snack bags that he did like the print on, that were just bags that people put snacks in. And here's like some advertising that he did. And you're like, oh my God, like, yeah, this guy was just making art to make a living too at the same
Yeah.
time. And it was, so I think there's something more timeless about realizing that that timeless piece of art that everyone is familiar with at the time probably wasn't timeless. It
Right.
might not have been worth billions of dollars, but there's something, their artists are always working, and I think people don't realize that how much art touches everything in the world around us. And I,
To that line of thinking, I think everyone just naturally wants to make something that matters and that is remembered.
mhm,
And but the reality is most things are forgotten, as time moves on. And I think to me it reaffirms that you just need to create and
yeah,
create things that you think are powerful, and what will be will be, And part of that came from when my studio burned down 6 years ago. I lost almost all my work, all my equipment, all my computers, all my hard drives, and it felt like I got erased from the world. Like
oh yeah, yeah, I could see
I just
that.
ceased to. I just kind of, artistically speaking, ceased to exist.
Yeah,
And that really changed how I looked at making art, because all of a sudden you realize it's all very temporary and maybe it doesn't matter. So what kind of art are you going to make now? What kind of art are you going to make if no one's going to remember you, if it all burns down one day? Like, let's say you have the best collector in the world, but they happen to live in Los Angeles, and all
yeah,
your work burns down one day and it doesn't exist. So like, what are you doing with your life? What's important? What do you really want to do? Do you still want to make art? All these kind of existential questions. And it informs my work today. I changed a lot about my process. I changed a lot about the subject matter, and I changed a lot about what I like to explore thematically and visually with people. So, um, it's just a question I always ask myself, like, what's timeless and what will endure, and what symbols. I mean, a parking sign, or there's somebody designed the street signs that we drive by every day, and they're not going to change for 100 years. Who was that
yeah.
artist? We don't know, but that's timeless. Like, so it's a lot of different fun ways to interpret that kind of thought.
It also brings, you made me think of, and this is art related. um so there's like nuclear waste, and they're like, the shelf life on this nuclear waste is like eons. It will be horrible stuff forever. How do we make a symbol that we can put on this container that, society falls and crumbles and reestablishes itself, and the language is lost, and the visual, communication is lost? Like skull and crossbones may not always be a bad thing. So like,
Right.
how do we label this container? One of the things that was pitched was the scream.
Really.
Yeah. as like that is a horrifying image, pretty much straightforward. Like it's hard to not interpret it as bad. Um, yeah, so it is like timeless is such an interesting word because we can't help but think of timeless in the frame of our lifespan.
Right.
Like real timeless is like you're right, like the stop sign is way more timeless than most art. Like it's been around forever. I have no idea who made it, and it will continue on long after me. But yeah, that's a really
There's just
fascinating question.
well, it's like the lunch bag thing made me think of it. It's like sometimes we don't intend to make things that last forever,
Yeah.
and sometimes we do and it doesn't. And it's just it kind of comes down to random chance and societal's taste. Society's taste, and another thing I think of, and I use this a lot in my work, is poker themes, poker cards, poker suits, poker books, because to me, I'm fascinated by just the game in general, but the symbols are timeless, right? It's been
Yeah.
around a long time, and I would argue that they're, hundreds of years from now, they're probably going to be still using those
Hmm.
suits. And it's just to me, it's always interesting what we hang on to, and why should we, and is it important? But I don't know.
Hey, have you ever had a piece of your art that in your mind was kind of like a throwaway doodle that continues to exist in some form? And I'm going to give you an example. So, Inebri-art started as a drink and draw. We hung out at a bar and drew in our sketchbooks. And a now good friend of mine, Natalie, was a bartender there, and we've stayed in touch. And apparently, one time, I don't even remember drawing it. And I don't remember why I drew Oscar the Grouch, but I drew Oscar the Grouch on a napkin. And to this day, it's in her purse. Like when she
Really?
buys a new purse, she'll take it out and move it into the new. And we're talking 2011 ish, and it's a
Wow.
napkin. like, like it holds up, and she's like, "Yeah, it's in pretty good shape." And it's just like, which is so. Again, it's that flattering thing where like she thinks enough of me and that goofy little doodle because it means something to her, and it carries on and lives on. And to me, it's just like I will forget about it until every once in a while, she'll bring it up or something. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, not quite like that. That's really, really a great story. Um, I mean, along those lines, sometimes people fall in love with work that I think is not the best, right? And that's the closest I can relate it to, where someone falls in love with something where you're like, really, that one? Okay.
yep.
And they just love it. Then you realize, all right, I love that you love that, and maybe I shouldn't be so harsh on my own work, and everyone sees it differently.
But that is part of the creative process. Every song means something to somebody differently, and every work of art does too.
I'm glad you brought up music. Music to me is such an interesting art form because I listen to music all day when I'm painting or when I'm designing, and every painting probably has a different playlist or soundtrack or genre. And in one of my recent paintings, I actually linked the song that inspired it to the piece, and it was fun getting feedback from people when they listened to the music and looked at the painting. And it wasn't for everybody. They're like, I don't like the song that much, but I love the painting. And I think that um, like 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 all forms of art, music is this maybe the most unique that can cut through all other art forms. It's in film, it's in TV, it's in advertisement, it's in inspirations for paintings. And I'm just curious, like what's your process like? Do you listen to music all the time, or are you more of
Um,
every now and then?
so I mentioned growing up, I played an instrument. I was voted class musician and promptly put it down. Because I was like, I'm going to be an artist. Uh, so I very much need some form of noise. So if I'm doing like emails or that kind of thing, I tend to just have like a TV on with something that I've seen before because I don't want it to really catch my attention and distract me. Um, but I listen to music in the car mostly. I love live music. And this actually makes me think of a recent conversation that I had. Actually, was on my birthday, and a buddy of mine, like out of nowhere, goes, "What goes on in your head?" And like to the group, and I'm like, "What? What's going on?" He's like, "Do you? Is there like a voice in your head all the time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's mostly music." So usually there is a song that is running in my head, like when I'm not having some sort of inner dialogue. Because he was like, "Oh, he's like, apparently I'm weird because there's just silence in my head," and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." But I'm like, yeah, there's always like my inner radio is always tuned into a song, and frequently, almost every single day when I wake up, it's almost like I wake up and I left the radio on because there's a song playing in my head, and it's not necessarily at the beginning. And I've even had days where I woke up and be like, I forgot this song existed. Like, where did my brain even pull this from?
Right, right, right.
So yeah, I very much love music, and it's so important in my mood. Like if I'm having a bad day, I can change on a dime. If I just, pop on some Jamiroquai, you can't be having a bad day if you're listening to Jamiroquai. And yeah, it's really important to me. And usually when I'm drawing, there is music playing. So it's not necessarily I get to choose what we're listening to, but yeah, it's definitely part of my
I
life.
can't imagine silence in your head. I don't know what
Oh
that
my
would be like.
god, right? I'm so jealous, and I'm like, so nothing. No one's arguing in your head all the time. Like you don't have that. Yeah, it was. I was
Seems
just like,
eerie.
he was the only one there that he's like, yeah, I don't hear anything. Like, and I'm like, oh my god, that's borderline psychopath or something. I don't know.
or maybe we are. I don't know because we hear all the voices, you know.
Yeah, but like
Um,
everybody was agreeing that like we had voices going on and stuff. But
all right. Um,
but excellent questions, man. Like I appreciate. Normally guests don't come preloaded with questions. That's
I did my homework.
yeah.
I'm a over prepare. I have notes.
Your
You know.
notes. Nice.
Yeah. You
I
know. I
uh I
mean.
I wrote down your name and that's
Oh, good.
it.
Good.
So
Um.
I am horrible with names, but
Oh, me too.
yeah, cool.
Well,
But
it's been a joy.
yeah,
I
yeah.
really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you reaching out and having an interest in my work and wanting to know more. And
Yeah. Before we go, where can our listeners go to check out your work in case they're not familiar with it?
so I mostly promote on my Instagram, which is Sandro Gebert Art. But you can also go to my website, sandroart.com, and you can see my work and link to my Instagram from there. It's a little easier.
Nice.
And I've got my first solo show coming up in August of this year in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm going to be delving into one of my favorite subjects, which is reimagining Alice in Wonderland.
Oh,
Um,
very cool.
I love delving into that. It's a story that I've revisited so many times. In college, I did my senior thesis on the subject, just a reimagined version of it. And this time, I'm going to really break down the whole show, character by character, and just see if people can make them out.
Oh, very neat. That's exciting. Um, August. Nice. Did you mention the gallery? Where it's going to be?
It's going to be at Chiaroscuro in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so like we used to do pop-up art shows pre-COVID, and I've been kind of like wanting to do it again. And someone recently told me that they did an art show, but everyone's art had to be on post-it notes.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
I'm like, that sounds super fun. I'm like, I don't know if anybody in Plymouth would appreciate it because it's a little more conservative, traditional town. But I'm like, I feel like I kind of want to do a post-it note show. So,
I would love to participate.
oh, that'd be very cool.
I'll send you a post-it note.
Okay, I'll have to work on that. So now, see, That's what happens. I throw out an idea and someone's like, I want in. I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing now. So like, let's make this happen. Cool. That would be unbelievably fantastic. But thank you so much. Listeners, go check out Sandro's work, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.